Hi guys, this is Steffen, poker coach and founder of BecomeAnOnlinePokerPro.com. Welcome back to episode 21 of the Bankroll building experiment. This is going to be another live play video. I haven't really done one of these in a while, but hopefully it works out. Hopefully I still can remember how to do one of these. Before we really get started with the video, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have written in the comments or by email showing your support since the latest video. It really means a lot. It's tough to describe how much it helps, just to get a pat on the back during a time like that. It's tough to really put into words, but I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's reached out. And results-wise, since the latest video, as you can see, we've been doing quite well. I've been playing like 13,000 hand, which is quite a bit, and we're up like 250, which is about 5 binds. This is all no limit 50. So yeah, results are quite good. We've been running like $70 above EV, which is always nice when it's that way around. And mentally, I think it's been going better as well. I've been having an easier time focusing, and just all around, both play and mental game has improved in the latest week, and things have been looking up, I guess you could say. About the mental game series, actually, I've been working on it, and what I've been doing is basically, trying to figure out what topics I want to cover, as well as, the structure of the whole thing. And I'm pretty sure that I'll have an intro video on what you can expect from the series out fairly soon. I don't know, maybe in a week maximum, I hope. So yeah, that's just an update on that, in case you guys are wondering. And I think this is it for the intro, guys. I have some tables loaded up, so I'm just going to pause the video quickly and get back when the tables are up. Alright guys, we are back. I've just been set in at all the tables. And we're ready to go. 4-3 here. Just a bit too small. We're not going to mess with it. He has a smaller stack, and 4-3 suited in that situation is either going to be a 3-bet or a fold, and I don't really like the 3-bet when he has a short stack. And I think maybe even 4-3 is a bit too loose either way, even if he had more on his stack. The 10-3 hand down here is just a classic steal spot. We've got a paired board and a guy with a limber who has a wide range. Table 1, this c-bet is kind of like, it's not clear really. It's a pretty coordinated board, and it's tough for us to continue applying pressure on turns and rivers, and there's a lot of gut shots he can call on the flop and backdoor flush draws that he can call on the flop, and I can't really continue barreling with a hand like this. Like, even having a hand like ace-king in this spot would be better than ace-8. Just because the equity of having the king and the jack that can kind of make nut hands makes that higher value than a hand like ace-8 here, where like there's a possibility that we're drawing dead already, and a lot of our outs to attain it, if a flush comes, our 2-pair's no good. It's just not a great spot, but definitely worth a c-bet, I think. And table 2, I'm just going to continue. We hit our ace, and the guy in the big blind looks quite fishy. So now we're going to keep betting now. On the river here, I don't really know. I think I'm going to put out like a small half-ish sized pot bet. I don't think he's betting a king himself. If I check, so if I check, it's kind of like a crappy spot, because if he bets now, do we call or do we fold? Really, when I don't expect him to bet a king, he has to turn like a 4 or 5 into a bluff. And I don't know if he's doing that or not. I think he might call, you know, with a king sometimes. He might call with a weaker ace. And yeah, and obviously sometimes he has the flush as well. So I think betting to ensure that we get some money the times he has a weak pair that he's not folding is better than, you know, check and calling, kind of guessing if he's betting, or check folding sounds even worse to me, you know, just assuming that he only bets when he has a speed. So yeah, since we don't know, I just elect to go ahead and put out a bet. Hope to get called by a worse king, or worse ace I should say, or a king. Ace 8 on table 1 is just a give up. It's a bad flop. This guy doesn't seem to be much of a folder on the flop. We don't really have any equity. We have no backdoor hearts, and that board hits a calling range much more than it hits an open raising range in that situation. So just giving up is going to be the best play there, I think. Here with the king queen, we're going to 3-bet. I like 3-betting, you know, less than 3x when we're in position. This basically gives him a better price to call, but you know, he can't really call that light either, just because, you know, if he just calls all the time thinking, well, I get great odds, what's going to happen is he's going to get to the flop with a very wide range, and because he's getting to the flop with a wide range, he's going to miss the flop a lot. So now he's in a situation in an inflated pot with a weak hand range, without initiative, and he's out of position, and it's just going to be so hard for him to play in that spot. And in that situation, well, he can do either one or two things. He can fold a ton on the flop, just basically. It's the same thing as folding pre-flop, except there's more money in the pot now, so we make more money when he folds on the flop after calling pre-flop with a wide range. Or what he can do is he can start playing back with a very wide range. But since we are 3-betting hands like king, queen, ace, jack, you know, kind of the value part of our range, you could say, we're going to have strong hands, very strong hands on average. So when he starts playing back at us with a very wide pre-flop range, he's just going to be in trouble, because we're going to be flopping strong hands most of the time. And yeah, you know, just playing back with a wide range against a strong range is just not going to be profitable at all. So yeah, definitely think that, you know, making your 3-bet smaller, it gives you a better price on the 3-bet. It also allows him to 4-bet smaller, which then allows us enough room to 5-bet and fold. And I know this probably sounds, you know, slightly crazy. Oh, didn't mean to sit out there. But the fact that we actually can 5-bet and fold makes it so that we can 5-bet a wider range, which makes it so that our overall line becomes more profitable. I know that stuff can be quite hard to follow, and I'm not really sure that I explained it right. But anyways, maybe another time when we're not playing. It's kind of a slightly complicated concept. But anyway, it's just something that I've been experimenting with lately, making it small in position. Most people tend to call a bit wider and just fold a lot on the flop, which is very profitable for us. And occasionally, because we are 3-betting, or I am 3-betting quite a bit, you get the people who just decide that I'm full of it and decide to play back with random stuff. And as you know, I'm not really 3-betting random stuff. You know, I have strong hands most of the time when I'm 3-betting, pretty much all the time when I'm 3-betting. So I'm going to be having a lot of bluff catches. So yeah, just overall I think pretty profitable. to go ahead and make it slightly smaller. It forces people, or I don't know, it doesn't really force them to do anything. They can do whatever they want, but it seems to tempt people to make more mistakes than the usual 3.5x 3-bet. I hope that makes sense. Mm, 10-9 here. You know, I'm not really a big fan of calling anything really when I'm not on the button, just because the further you are away from closing the action, the more people are behind you. The more people are behind you, the more or the higher the possibility of one of these guys having a hand that they feel like 3-betting. And you know, calling with suited connectors or even small pairs, the EV of calling these hands is so small that if you have people 3-betting you a lot behind, you know, that small amount of EV you're gaining just completely goes away when people are 3-betting you a lot behind. So it is quite dicey, you know, to call suited connectors or small pairs when you're not on the button. I do tend to call a ton of small pairs pretty much always, just because the value of flopping sets against weak players is pretty huge. This is a weird hand. So we did call the 10-9 suited. It checked around, so he checked the flop, and we bet he called. You know, it's weird for him to have a flush draw. That doesn't make any sense, because we check back the turn, we can't really have a flush draw either. I don't think that often. He would have bet a set, he would have bet, like, what kind of ace is he check calling in this spot? Like, ace-9 maybe, ace-6 perhaps. Like, I just don't see how he's ever having a bluff in this situation. Like, I think he would have bet a pair of 6s. I think he would have bet a pair of 8s. Seems so weird to fold in this spot, but I have absolutely no idea what he has. But I'm having a hard time putting him on a bluff. You know, the flush got there, but it would be very weird for him to check call with a flush draw. It's just the fact that he raised pre-flop and then check called the flop kind of makes it so that he can't really have air in his range that often, in my opinion. Yeah, that was a weird hand. If you guys have any thoughts, you know, let me know down below in the comments. Yeah, that was weird. Oh, by the way, at the top right, the way I got my stack was while, you know, setting up the video, and I basically 3-bet kings, got a call, flop came king 8-6 with 2 diamonds. Oh, sorry. And I c-bet, and the guy who called in position, I 3-bet from the small blind. The guy who called on the button, he decided to raise my c-bet, and I shoved it in. He called. He had a diamond draw, and I was able to win that pot. He couldn't hit it. Lucky for me. Here with the 10s and table 1. I'm going to be 4-betting and calling. This guy is 3-betting a decent bit, and I don't really have too much of an idea about his frequency, but you know, I guess I could call here as well, but I like to be 4-bet bluffing quite a bit in these situations, and if I am 4-bet bluffing quite a bit, I do need to have strong hands in that range as well. And you know, when I don't really know how he reacts, like let's say I know that whenever I 4-bet him, he just folds everything except aces and kings. Well, if I know that, then I'm obviously not going to be. 4 betting tens. I'm just going to be calling, keeping in all of the weaker hands, and playing smaller pots. But when I don't know if he likes to shove in with weaker pairs than tens, and if I don't know stuff about how he reacts to my 4 bets, I can't really design a strategy revolving around what he's doing. So just calling there, thinking that well, he never gets it all in with nines, that's kind of like basing my strategy off whatever it is that he's doing. But since I don't really know whatever it is that he's doing, except that he is 3-betting quite a bit, then I feel like it makes more sense to focus on my own strategy, on my own range for that particular spot. And this is something that I've been working on quite a bit in the last month or so. It's kind of like this new way of thinking poker, where previously you would always be focusing on what are your opponent's mistakes and how can you exploit them to the maximum. The thing with using this exploitable way of thinking, it really comes when you don't know exactly how your opponents are going to react. So when you are kind of assuming the opponents are going to react in one way, and that then they are, then they react the opposite way, then the adjustment that you made based on your assumption is now going to be completely false. So when you're playing the exploitable, or when you're taking the exploitable approach to poker, you're either very wrong or you're very right. And it makes sense to play this way when you're playing against weak players who are not going to disguise how they're playing their hands. They're not going to disguise. They're not going to They're not going to try to manipulate you. They just play bad. If they call too wide pre-flop and they have a high fold c-bet stat, that's just how they're playing. You can't really go wrong with opening wide and then c-betting a ton, because, well, they just fold way too much. There's nothing more to say about it. But if you start to make assumptions about what kind of hands people are raising in certain spots, what kind of hands people are folding in certain spots, and then folding really strong hands or calling really weak hands based on these assumptions, then you end up making your strategy pretty vulnerable. You end up being vulnerable to your own mistakes. So the exploitative approach is great if you know your opponent very well. If you have a great idea of how they're thinking, what they're doing, and what kind of hands they're doing different things with, then it's great. It's awesome. Just keep using the exploitative approach, and I'm still using the exploitative approach all the time, especially against weaker players, or the weaker good players. But in instances where I don't really know anything about my opponent, let's say he's a new opponent, I don't really know anything about him yet, I try to think more about my strategy, trying to make my own strategy hard to play against, instead of focusing on the whole cards that I have in that particular situation. Let's say I raised pre-flop from the cutoff, and now a flop comes of, I don't know, just some random flop. Instead of thinking about the 2 whole cards I'm holding in that specific situation, I try to think about the entire range that I'm raising from the cutoff, and then thinking about how that entire range hits this flop. Let's take the example on the top left. So instead of thinking about me having king queen off here with no diamond or no club in my hand, I try to think about what hands from my entire range that I would want to c-bet in this situation. So in this spot, I would be c-betting any pocket pair 5s or above. I would be c-betting any king, probably any 6 or any 5. I'll be c-betting any backdoor flush draw, with the the clubs, I would be c-betting any flush draw. I'd be c-betting any gut shot, so let's say 7-9 or... yeah, 7-9 I guess is the only gut shot. I'd be c-betting... no, I guess 8-9 is the gut shot as well. And I'd be c-betting, 7-8 for the open-ender. And I'd be c-betting some unpaired hands, like ace-queen, queen-jack if I had, the queen of diamonds. I try to think about... oops, set out at the bottom. I would have called the bet in that situation. And then I try to think about where each hand in my entire range would fit into my range for betting a flop. And the thing is, if I just c-bet 100% of the time in that situation up there, then my strategy is going to focus on exploiting my opponent. Then I'm going to try to exploit him folding way too much, either on the flop, on the turn, or on the river. If I'm c-betting that much, I'm trying to exploit him folding at a later stage in the hand. So basically, if I'm wrong about my assumption that he's going to fold too much later in the hand, then my strategy for c-betting the flop is going to be very wrong. Let's say he's never folding at any point, and let's say he just calls all the way to the river, and if he doesn't have anything by the river, he's just going to, re-bluff us. Then me betting all hands all the time is going to be a very bad strategy. So, and the fact that, let's say I bet all my hands on the flop, and then on the turn, if I don't hit anything, I'm just going to slow down. That's usually how I would have been playing in the old days, and even when I started this series, that would kind of, be my basic approach. And it's still a very solid approach, but it's just not optimal, because, let's say you c-bet the flop, a flop like that, king 6-5, like 80-90% of the time, just because it is a dry flop, and it is hard for your opponent to hit something. Now this means that you're going to get to the turn with a very, very wide range, and on the turn the pot is getting bigger now. So let's say his strategy revolves around never really folding the flop, because he knows you c-bet way too much. Then he's going to continue playing inflated pots with you on either the turn or the river, and trying to steal it. And if we are c-betting too much, on the flop, then our ranges for playing back against him on turns or rivers are going to be too weak. So that's kind of a basic example of how thinking about your entire strategy can help avoid you being exploited on later streets. So it's kind of, I guess it's a more, you could say it's a more defensive approach, Instead of trying to think, how can I beat my opponent, you're trying to think, how can I make it so that it's not easy to beat me? And it's not something that I would recommend if you know your opponent well, if you know his tendencies, if you're able to kind of predict how to best beat an opponent, then it's not something that I would recommend. But let's say it's a guy you don't know, you have absolutely no idea how he plays, then in my opinion it makes sense to focus on creating a strategy that's tough to play against, that's tough to beat, instead of hoping that he plays in a certain way. And that's just some of the stuff I've been thinking about, I guess, in the past few months, where we haven't really spoken that much. And it can be pretty tough to explain, especially while recording a video and all. But I just think it's important for you guys to know basically what I'm thinking, how how I'm evolving as a poker player, because as a poker player you constantly have to evolve, you have to adapt, you have to try and learn, you have to constantly try and learn and become a better poker player. And you're not just really focusing more on the and this more defensive approach is called the game theory optimal approach. You guys can read up on that. There's a ton of stuff in the 2+2 poker forums concerning this. And yeah, I just think it's kind of an interesting approach to poker, and something that I've been trying to think more about in situations, trying to work that into my mindset. Instead of just going king, 7, deuce, rainbow, great board to c-bet, I'm gonna c-bet 100% of my range. Even though that's a fine play, and that's going to be a very profitable c-bet. Just trying to focus on how different board textures affect how much you're going to c-bet, how often you're going to hit something, and the less of the time that you're going to be having flush draws, for example. On rainbow boards you won't have as many flush draws. Now, how does this affect your betting range? And if you're only betting your strong hands now, well, then you're not going to be betting pretty much anything. So let's say you have to add more hands to this betting range now. Which hands do you choose? And how do you kind of balance this out over turns and rivers? It's pretty tough to think about, to be honest. But it's exciting as well. I think it's exciting. Just going to try and do that one more time. I think it's exciting, so obviously that's why I'm thinking about it. And yeah, whenever we're doing these live play videos, it's kind of just me rambling a bit, talking about what I'm thinking during the hands that come up, and what I'm thinking about just with poker in general. So I have a feeling this has been a pretty confusing, pretty clumsy video, to be honest, but I know it has been a few months since the latest one, so I guess you guys will have to cut me a little slack. So yeah, I think that's it. I think I have to go now, just in a few minutes, so I better wrap this video up. And yeah, as I just said, bit clumsy, bit confusing, I think. I don't really know. Anyways, you guys let me know. Leave a comment down below. I'll make sure to read and answer every one of them. And yeah, I hope you found this useful, and I hope you're excited for the mental game series. I think it might be helpful for pretty much everyone. So yeah, I think that's it, guys. I hope you're all doing great with your own bankroll building experiments, and yeah, talk to you guys soon.